Very, very excited to have you all to here. We've had a phenomenal response of interest about how to help young adults get the internship or get that first job. And we're going to talk a lot about that this evening. So you're in the right place. If you are just joining, I'm going to ask if you'd be so kind to answer the two-question poll. It just gives me a sense of who's here and what's on your mind. And again, my colleague Haley will be posting in the chat of some of resources that I'm going to be talking about, some articles that I'm going to be quoting as well. And there's a lot of resources there. But as we speak, and you have more questions, please put those into the chat. I'm sorry, into the Q&A. So if you have specific questions about career search specific questions, please put those in the Q&A so I know to look there because sometimes we have a lot of other information in the chat. So just trying to get that all together. Okay, awesome. So let me share with you. I got just a couple of content I think would be very helpful. Very often people are always asking me, well, where's that statistic and where'd you get that from? And so I thought, let me share some of that information with you so it's easy to access and you can see that as well. All right. So let's talk about what's happening, right? This process of sending kids to college, helping them land an internship at that first job, this was supposed to be easy. That we all thought that this was supposed to be something that you go to college, you get an education, you get a job, and you're able to move on and plan a career. And for, a couple of different reasons, it's just a lot harder than any of us ever planned or expected. And it's for a whole host of reasons, which we'll talk about tonight. But we really understand how difficult this is. And I think expectations from a parent and student and employer have really evolved and changed. So let's talk about what's happening right now. Right now, 2 million students graduate college every year, and over 80% think they're ready for work. But very often, only 50% of hiring managers are in agreement. The jobless rate for new grads continues to surpass that of workers ever since January of 2021. A few years ago, there were two jobs for every job seeker. Let me just say it again. There were two jobs for every job seeker. Now there's two applicants for every job. So it's very competitive and much more competitive. Many of our students, they want to get internship, but over 30% are saying that they're reporting difficulty in making that happen. And about 4 in 10 students of our college grads are underemployed, meaning they are in a job that did not require a college degree. So how do we manage this, right? We have young adults and grads, they're struggling, they're overwhelmed. As parents, we thought, the university was supposed to handle this. We're not sure how to give them guidance. And employers tell us they don't want to babysit. They don't want to hold their hand. They want someone who can come in and really be ready to go. So we have this problem. We have this disconnect. So tonight, let me tell you what we're going to do, and then I'll tell you a little bit about, actually, let me go back. I'm going to tell you a little bit about me. For those of you who haven't met me or I haven't had the opportunity to connect with you, first of all, welcome. My name is Beth Hendler Grunt, and I'm the CEO and founder of Next Great Step. And our sole focus is to help college students and recent grads land the internship or the first job after college. And in April of this year, we are celebrating 10 years of providing this as a resource and service for clients and young adults and families who have been struggling. I also am the mom of a college senior and a third-year grad student, and both are graduating this year. So I am living this with you real time. I get it. I know how challenging it is. I know when your kids don't want to listen to you, even if you're offering good advice. So I really do understand. I'm also an Amazon #1 best-selling author of the book called The Next Great Step, The Parent's Guide to Launching Your New Grad into a Career. And yes, I wrote it for parents, but it's for kids too. It's really a way for parents and families to talk about how to navigate this process together if that's kind of how you want to navigate that. So, very excited that you're here. And my goal for this evening is really to cover the following: to talk about what's happening from a parent perspective of what we're hoping will happen when our kids go to school and hopefully get a job, what students are thinking will happen when they are going through the process, and then what employers are expecting. I'm then going to talk about very specific the outlook and trends for 2025 of what we see specifically for young adults and the class of 2025 and what's happening from that perspective. I will give some tips and guidance, but I'm really here to answer your questions. What I have found, and I've done a number of these sessions, that there's so many questions. How can I be of service to you to help answer what's on your mind? I've had a number of people who've written in questions as well. I will do my very best to get to those and hopefully offer some insight as well. All right. So again, as I'm speaking for the first, 15 minutes or so, please put your questions into the Q&A. And then any other specific you'll see from Haley, you can look in the chat. She'll have all kinds of resources that you can take a look at. So let's talk about it. So, as parents, we are so excited and working with our kids and helping them get to school and kind of the feeling like we did it, right? We all did it because we know it's a family effort to make this happen. And we thought when we went on the campus tour that the schools said to us, we got it. We're going to make sure that your student has everything they need to be successful in this journey and to help them have a job when they graduate. But somehow it doesn't always happen the way we thought. Very often we expect that our students are going to engage with career services and campus resources. But did you know that on average, only 4 out of 10 students go to career services? And there's a lot of reasons for that. That's another day. We also expect that our students are going to gain life skills, learning how to communicate, network, meeting people, joining clubs, advocating for themselves, leadership. But sometimes they don't happen the way we thought. And now we have kids who missed a large chunk of that due to the pandemic. So maybe they didn't get it the way we thought they would. Very often parents say, you know what? I have a lot of connections and I'm going to introduce my child to these people and that will help them get a job. And by the way, I am all for connections. But what I also hear very often, parents will tell me, say, I introduced my son to a friend and this person was the vice president at the company. It just didn't go anywhere. Or I think my kid kind of blew it. Maybe they were too casual. Maybe they weren't even prepared and they didn't really know what to say. So often, sometimes those connections don't work out the way we think. Also, parents tell me, hey, look, I haven't looked for a job in 20, 30 years. I'm not sure what the current way is to find employment, and I'm not really sure the right way of how to give that guidance to my child. And last, the comment that comes up a lot, I've done a whole separate presentation on this comment of, I wish I knew. I wish I knew how early the process started, or I wish I knew to advise my young adult to engage on campus in a certain way, or maybe create a resume or LinkedIn, whatever it might be. And I just want to assure you that whether you told them or you didn't tell them, you're not too late. It's never too late. So now is the chance that hopefully I'll give you some of those insights of how you can support them. So those are some typical perspectives that I hear from parents. From a student perspective, and I know we have students on as well, very often students will come into school very enthusiastic, as you should, feeling like I did it. I got into the school I wanted. I think I have the right major. I've picked the area that I want to pursue or learn about, and you're excited about it. And then as you progress in school, whether it's sophomore, junior year, you say, you know what, let me try to get a work experience. Let me try to get an internship. I'll just go to LinkedIn or Handshake or Indeed, and I'll hit the easy button. I'm just going to send out 10, 20, 50, 100 applications. I'm just going to put it out there because I'm sure someone will come find me. Sometimes it happens and it works. Very often it doesn't. And students will say, you know what? I don't understand. I have, good grades, or I reached out to these companies. I didn't hear back. So then there's a feeling of, maybe I just need to beat the tracking system. I need to beat the AI. I need to fill my resume or LinkedIn profile with more keywords. That's what I need to do. So that happens sometimes, and sometimes it works. Not always does it work. And then there starts to be this feeling of like, wow, what am I doing wrong? Maybe I'm not going about it correctly, or maybe I don't have the right skills, or maybe I'm not good enough. And we can't underestimate what's going on with our young adults that, on average, 30 to 40% are dealing with some type of anxiety or depression. And clearly, the pandemic did not help that. So now a lot of young adults are overwhelmed. They feel stuck. They feel afraid. They question, whether it's reaching out to someone or whether they're worthy of it. And really, really smart kids, and that you all are really smart individuals, start to question yourself. And then we have the employer perspective. Employers have told us and told me, this is where I'm at. We all know, we've seen the headlines. Employers have scaled back. It is not the same in tech and in finance and white collar roles as it was a few years ago. They're being much, much more selective. And they really need candidates who come to them who have the right talent and the right skills. Very often, an employer would say to me, it's kind of frustrating because very often a student will come to me and they'll say, I really want this job because it's great for me. But that's not what an employer wants to hear. They want it to be great for them, for their business, for their organization. And until a young adult figures that out, the employer's not as interested. The other thing that employers are doing is this concept of quiet hiring. Quiet hiring is where you never see that job on a job board. You never see it hit Indeed or LinkedIn. Because what they do is they say, I need to hire someone. I'm going to do one of two things. I'm either going to look internally, or I'm going to go out to my own network of people that I know and trust and say, do you know anyone who has these skills? I don't want to put this out on a job board. I don't have time for that. I trust you. And if you know someone and you can bring me a candidate that you really trust, I'd like to see them. And that's how a lot of candidates are getting hired. In essence, that is the hidden job market. And the other thing they want to see is they do want to see real world experience, whether it's an internship or part-time job or taking on, clubs or leadership roles on campus, something that shows how a student can connect the dots from experience that they've had to how they can relay that to the workplace. So clearly, there are these three different viewpoints on the job market and how to approach it. And because of that, I think we need to really think carefully from each of those. So let's talk about what the outlook is and what are the trends that I've curated. I tend to do this every year. So this is something I did specifically. You'll probably see it if you join my mailing list. I'll probably put this into a blog for February, but I think this is really important to understand what's happening in the market right now. And I'll call it with the challenges. I'll start with the things that make us a little concerned. And I mentioned the first one already. We already know that there have been more limited white collar roles. It just has been. There was a study done that 2 million students wanted internships in 2023. Barely half were able to get them. So clearly, we have a major supply and demand issue in that area as well. And obviously, don't even get me started with paid versus unpaid. But we have a problem where companies want all this experience, yet not enough companies are putting it out there for students to take advantage of it. There was an article written in the Wall Street Journal just last week that the article was about that Harvard MBAs are having a tough time getting a job, right? So it's like if Harvard MBAs are having a tough time, that they can't rely on the pedigree or solely on the school name to get them an entree into a company. They still, all in the same article it talks about how Amazon and Google, Microsoft, they've decreased their recruiting or they're not sending as many people on campus. And they even interviewed the head of the MIT Sloan School for the career services there. And she said, the most effective way is that our students have to engage professors and alumni, AKA you have to be networking. You can't solely rely on your grades and the school name to get you a job. The other statistic is that the average time to get a job this year is 6 months. Used to be 5.5 months. And now the average time is 6 months. So also managing expectations. I have so many students or families say, I can't believe it. It's taken a week, a couple weeks, months, or the average time from like a really concentrated looking for a job is 6 months. So it takes time. There was another study that talked about interviewing employers and understanding what they thought young adult college grads were lacking. And they're sharing that college grads are lacking interpersonal skills, problem solving skills, leadership skills, and written and oral communication. It kind of makes sense with what's happened with the pandemic and not as many chances to have internships. I mean, all these things kind of have a domino effect. So there is this continued disconnect between employer expectations and what grads are offering. But here's the good news. Let's shift to where I think there's a lot of positive outlooks, especially for 2025. Right now, in an interview of CEOs, over 42% expect to increase headcount by 5% as a whole. In December, we added 256,000 jobs and the unemployment rate decreased to 4.1%. Specifically to the class of 2025, NACE, which is the National Association of Colleges and Employers, who continually does these studies and these surveys, sees a 7% increase for the class of 2025 over class of 2024. So that is positive. We're moving in the right direction. And in that same survey, 40% of employers plan to increase the salaries for new college grads, not just in general, but specifically for new grads. There was another study done by, oh my God, the school is Drexel University, this 2025 annual college hiring survey, where they asked employers, what are the most important qualities that you are looking for when hiring? The responses were ethical judgment, thought that was really interesting, adaptability, and critical thinking. And the three areas that have the highest demand for new grads, technology, finance, healthcare, very similar to what has actually been happening over the last few years. The other survey that NACE did, they did a survey asking employers when they look at a candidate's resume, what are the things that stand out to you most? And I think that if I'm saying this right, 90% were saying a candidate's ability to solve problems was very high on their list of someone that they would potentially move on or want to interview, as well as 80% were looking for strong teamwork skills. And the other skills they were looking for were strong work ethic, written and verbal communication skills, analytical, flexible, adaptability comes up again, and technical. And the other interesting thing that's coming about is that, and I had even a parent ask me a question about it, about, what if my student doesn't have the best GPA, or maybe it's a little bit lower? We're seeing less focus on GPA and more focus on skills, which I think is a tremendous opportunity for young adults, especially if maybe the GPA wasn't optimal, or they've had the opportunity to take on part-time roles or learn skills. So I think there's some really positive things that are going to be happening in the coming year for our grads, which I'm really, really optimistic about. So what do we do with this, right? This is dizzying information. What are we doing with, the market's up, the market's down, how do we know? The only thing that I know and that I can guarantee is that there's guaranteed to be change. It just is. And what we have seen over and over, I'm now doing this for 10 years, that the candidates who have the most success are the ones who are prepared and really take a self-reflective look on what value do I have to an employer, and how do I share that through my skills? How do I differentiate myself? How do I make sure that I'm targeting the right people at the right companies? And the other big piece is that one phone call, one email, one text, one follow-up is not going to move the needle. The ability to persevere when things are tough or when someone doesn't call you back, I know how difficult and upsetting it is. And it's just feeling like, what am I doing this for? But I'm telling you, those who persist and persevere and continue to follow up tend to have the most success. So with that, I'm going to pause for a moment. I'm going to give you a chance to let me take a look at the Q&A. I'm going to put my glasses on so I can see what's going on here um, and see how we can answer some questions. Wow, we have a lot of oh my gosh. Hey, Daryl. One of my friends from work from many, many years ago. I'm so excited you're here. Okay, let's start. Hi, Mark. Thanks for your question. It says, what should we expect? So let's just kind of, here again, just please post your questions in the Q&A and the resources are in the chat. So, what should we expect from the Career Center of a small size private university? How does an out of state senior pursue a job back in their home state metro area? Really good question. And by the way, doesn't matter if you go to a small school or a big school. If you live in New York and you went to school in California and maybe you want to come back, this comes up a lot. So a couple things about that. First of all, you need to make use of every resource that you have at your university, no matter how small it is. Sometimes I know our students are very quick to be like, I don't want to go to career services. They're not any good. I don't need to go there. Just tell them to go first before they say no. And then I might be familiar with a couple of kids who tell, like my own, who say, no, I don't need to do that. Just tell them to go. The other thing, when you're at a smaller school, let's say career services isn't as robust as you'd like it to be, an incredible resource for our students are professors. And it's okay if the school, again, is somewhere else. Professors have a lot of contacts and ideas and connections. And I'm really a big proponent of students getting to know their professors and getting to know, making sure, if it's especially if it's a class that you love, especially if it's a class that's really tied to your major and what you want to potentially pursue. I think that's really important. Let me take this off for a minute. Here we go. Let's do that. Here I am. So I'm really a big proponent of connecting with professors to make sure that you're talking to them, tell them about what you're interested in, see if they have any resources, see if they have any resources in the places and potentially cities where you want to be. If that does not work, or if that's all exhausted and your student still wants to come back to their hometown and the school where they're at, I love LinkedIn. I think it's an amazing, amazing resource. And there's a tool inside of LinkedIn. It's called the LinkedIn Alumni Tool. Everybody has it. It's free. If you're a student or a parent, anyone, you go and you type in either the name of the university or your own university, or you click on the icon and it brings you to a page that actually brings up a whole profile of all the people that went to the same university. And you can say what year they graduated, what did they study, what they're doing now, what companies they work at. And you can see who's maybe in a city or company or role that could be of interest to you. And it doesn't matter if they graduated 20 years ago or 2 years ago. I mean, in general, I actually encourage students to talk to people who are younger because they tend to have a better sense of what it's like to be in an entry-level role now. They're also a little bit more approachable. But alumni love talking to alumni. And they're usually a very welcoming community to have a conversation to say, I'd like to learn more about your role. I'd say worry less about, I need to be in this city. I'm not saying you should ignore it, but start to get clarity on the kind of role that you really want by having those networking conversations. And then you can hone in on, okay, I know I really want to be more in this area. What are the types of companies that are doing it in this type of company? And the other thing in LinkedIn, which you can do for anybody, doesn't have to be alumni. So I'll just say, for example, my son went to Penn State. Okay. Let's say he wanted to go work in a job or in a city and he couldn't find anyone from Penn State. It doesn't matter. He can go to any young adult. You can use the filter buttons and you can look at any school because the intro and the email and the message in LinkedIn be like you, I'm a recent grad. I'm really interested in what you're doing. Would you be so kind to connect? And I'd like to speak with you for 10, 15 minutes to learn about your role. You're not asking for a job. You're not asking for an internship. You're just trying to start the beginnings of building a relationship. And I think whether it's through alumni or just reaching out to other young adults who are on LinkedIn, who are doing a role that you aspire to, LinkedIn is great because it's also a database. You can search for the name of the jobs or find people who are doing it, who maybe have only been out of school for a few years, or a few schools that are in I think one of the people asked, the son wants to go back to Florida. So look up some of the people who graduated from some of the Florida schools, or you can find people also by their geography of where they work. Because there's so much that happens. I know a lot of going back to work. There's still a lot that's remote or hybrid. Focus in more on the kind of role you want, who's doing that role, connecting with people who are in that role. And I think that will help lead you to figure out what are the companies that need that kind of expertise and that skill set. So I hope that helps. I have so many videos. If you're not following me, I'm on every social channel: LinkedIn, Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, whether TikTok stays or not. I'm on YouTube, and I have actually quite a few videos on how to use the LinkedIn tool to find people to connect. But I'm, definitely use it. It's an amazing free resource. A lot of times people don't even think of that. Okay. Next question. So my daughter graduated last May with a degree in communications, has been looking for a job in PR, had an internship. It didn't yield a job. I gave her your book. Thank you. She's been using it. There's so few entry-level jobs, even though there's a lot of employers. Number of courtesy interviews. I'm going to try to get to the bottom here. So she's beyond discouraged because she's so right for this space. She has a number of courtesy interviews via networking, went through 3 interviews and writing sample and a well-known, and they went with someone else. Okay, and this is where, the disappointment is. And boy, do I get it. I really get it. It is tough. I'm not even underplaying. It is so hard. I don't care whether you're a young adult or someone who's been in the job market for years. It's really hard not to take it personally. And it's really hard not to get down on yourself and discouraged and think like, I'm not good enough. Or in this example, she really wanted this great PR job. And she's like, well, I'm just going to go to sales. So let me tell you something about how I've helped students who get rejected from a job actually get a job at that company. One of This happens all the time, right? You come down, you're one of the final candidates, you're one of the final 3 or the final 2, or you think you have it, you think you're doing all the right things, and for whatever reason, which by the way may have nothing to do with you, it could be somebody internal, it could be the boss's kid, it could be just they ran out of money. You have no idea. And I know young adults take it so personally and so hard, but let me tell you what I suggest. If your daughter made it that far in an interview for a job that she really wants and she knows, she feels that she was good enough, I know this is a tough one. She has to go back to the person that she interviewed with, a little bit less about HR. I'd rather her message back the person that did the final, or group of people that did the final interview, and send them an email and say, I really appreciate the time. And while I'm disappointed in not getting the role, I'm so grateful for the opportunity. If you would be so kind to share some feedback with me so I can learn how to better prepare for a future role in this organization or one like this, I would really appreciate it. In essence, you want her to get back in touch with them for a 10, 15-minute phone call. Get on the phone, have a conversation, or get on a video call. Say, can you just share with me what I could have done better? And it's very humbling, right? It's not saying I'm the best. It's like, tell me what I really need to do. Can I learn something? Do I need a certification? Is it just more experience? But I'll tell you, when companies see that a candidate that might have been the second choice comes back to them and sees that they have enough humility and confidence to say, I want to learn from this. I have had so many opportunities where the employer says, you know what? I'm so impressed that you came back to us. And I'm sorry that we don't have this open now, but I'm going to keep you in mind because I think I have another role and it's going to happen in another few months. Please stay in touch with me. Or your daughter saying, would it be okay if I stayed in touch with you? I really want to share with you as I'm going through this process. Or could you be a mentor to me as I navigate this? So this is taking a rejection and turning it into someone that they've spent a lot of time interviewing her too. It wasn't nothing, right? She needs to come back to them. And if this is what she really wants, then she needs to keep persisting. And it's not by throwing spaghetti on the wall. It's by targeting people who have the job that she wants, or find someone who went to the same school, or find someone who's only been doing the job for a few years. Reach out on LinkedIn saying, I'm really interested in the role that you're doing. I'd like to learn more, or I'd really like to understand your career path of how you got there. Knowledge is power. And I think very often Students and young adults will say, I know it, I got it, I looked it up online. There is nothing more valuable than speaking to a live person to give you some insight. And I know it's uncomfortable, right? Who wants to call anybody on the phone? I mean, most, you know, 20 somethings don't. But I'm telling you, if you reach out and you're persistent and you share even with these, people that you didn't get the job with, or with someone who is also in another, similar industry doing a similar job to learn about how they got there, that's how people get hired. That's how you become part of that quiet hiring hidden job market. I just hired somebody 6 months ago. I didn't put the job out. I don't have the time and the energy to put it out for hundreds of people. I reached out to my network that I knew and I trusted. And that's how I had some people come to me, and that's who I ended up hiring. I'm not saying it just, this is how it's happening. And I want our young adults to take advantage of that. So I hope that helped answer your question. All right. Hey, Daryl. Oh my gosh. I just have to say, Daryl and I work together. I used to work for AT&T and then Lucent Technologies and then Avaya. And Daryl was on my sales team, who was a phenomenal salesperson. And now she's like a leader in her own right, a director at all these different companies. I'm so happy you're here. And I'm so happy we really should catch up separately. But anyway, okay. The question is, I'm interested in knowing the importance of an internship versus just a summer job, the summer between junior and senior year in college. Good answer. Good question. Really good question, right? So I've talked about this importance and desire of employers to see work experience, how it is really, really helpful for students to get real world work experience. However, for all kinds of reasons, sometimes it happens and sometimes it doesn't, right? Maybe you're an athlete. Maybe you need to work over the summer and you can't do an internship that's unpaid, or the kind of work that you're looking for, you couldn't find something that was paid. I think there's options. Yes, ideally, would I like to see a student have work experience between junior year and senior year? Absolutely. Even if you hated it, just so you know that you hated it and you don't spend your time looking for a job doing that. But I want to give you a bunch of options. And Haley, if you're listening, if you can go to my blogs, there's a blog about other choices of what you can do if you don't get an internship. See if you can find it and post it in the chat. But if not, Daryl, I'll send it to you. I can send it out. Couple choices. One, yes, if you can try to get an internship in the area that you're interested in, absolutely. I highly encourage it. Please do that. And it doesn't have to be, and I want to just reinforce, sometimes people get so intimidated. They're like, well, I missed my window and I'm not working for Goldman Sachs, or I'm not working for Apple, or I'm not working for there's thousands of companies. And I'm not as concerned about young adults getting jobs at a big name company for their internship. I actually don't always think that's the best. I'd rather you work for a small company that's local that you never really heard of, or maybe a local accounting firm or professional firm, and where you're getting skills. I want students to acquire skills. That's more important than the name of the company, in my opinion. And obviously, if you're on a path for investment banking, it's a little bit different. But in general, it's what kind of skills can you acquire? I don't care if you work for the mom and pop pizza shop. If you're able to come up with a social media plan and market it and do a promotion or do some kind of giveaway, or you're going to able to operationalize them and make them more efficient, better, faster, or able to do their books for them, it's the skill that I'm more interested in and less about the name of the company or how prestigious it is. So I think we get hung up on that. The other thing I love sometimes, and I've have kids who are athletes, right? They don't have time for an internship or whatever happens. There's a great company. I know the owner. I have no incentive at all, but the company is called Parker Dewey. It's Parker. Maybe Haley, you can link their website in the chat. Dewey. They do micro internships specifically for college students. So they work with big name companies actually who need projects. It's project-based work. So maybe Pepsi needed a database organized, or maybe another manufacturing company needed something support on a marketing presentation. This is a great way. It's like a week or two or three. So you could, if you over winter break or a part of your summer, you can bridge all of these together. and they're excellent. And I really, really like what they're doing. It's a great way to get experience if you don't have 8 or 10 weeks to do it. And they're very often all paid. Thanks, Haley. Thanks for posting that. Um, there's also a company called The Forage where you can do these simulations and kind of mini certifications of different companies and big name companies. Basically, it's like where you can be certified in, I think I saw it like for the Red Bulls. If you want to learn how to be in sales or ticket sales for them, you can take these mini certifications and then you can show Red Bull that you have the certification. And maybe now you're more appealing to them because you've done one of their internal certification programs. Again, these are all geared towards college students. So my answer is I just want students to have experience and I want them to gain skills. And I'm less worried about the name of the company or how long it is. It's just that you're doing things that enhance your skill set beyond what's in the classroom. So I hope that helped answer your question. But Daryl, you know how to reach me. If you have a question, call me. Okay. Hey, Molly. Son is a 24 grad, had a job upon graduation, began in July, moved to a new city, was in training, and then the job. He was excited, quickly realized the company wasn't a good fit. He stuck it out, but he left. He determined he wasn't in a good place. A job search began in earnest, had a few hits. One was a scam. He feels stuck, doesn't know what to do next. I'm sorry about that. That stinks. But I know it doesn't feel like a positive thing right now, but it was positive that he had this experience and he didn't like it. And the only reason why I say that is, first of all, when you're younger, you can take more risks, right? Usually you tend to not have a mortgage or kids or things that require a little more stability. And I know it's upsetting that things don't work out, but that is a piece of valuable information for him to know that he didn't like it. So now he knows when he's looking for other jobs, he knows he's more informed. But I understand about the whole thing about being very disappointed. And there are scams. Let's just talk about that for a minute. There's a lot of scams on LinkedIn, on Indeed, on Handshake, and all these places where you think it's legit. So I just want to reinforce if you're applying for a job, you need to make sure that you also go to the company page on LinkedIn, that there's quite a few people there, that they're real people. Try to connect with these people. You can also, by the word, type the name of the company in or type the name of the job and type the word scam into this Google search bar. And things will come up either like on Reddit or other places if other people have been scammed. So if something doesn't feel right, you're probably correct. There's a lot of people taking advantage. The other thing that happens, or companies go through the motion of putting a job out there when they already have a candidate, and that's really crappy, but they have to sometimes do that. Um, so you just have to get a sense of that. I want to point out something though about I know I'm a little off topic, but I'll come back to your question about how to help him. Very often, a lot of students will say to me, I went to apply for the job on LinkedIn, but it showed like 5,000 people already applied to it. So there's no way I'm going to apply for it, or hundreds of people. I just want to tell you that that is not a correct number. If you go on LinkedIn and you go to apply to a job and it says 300 people apply, 300 people did not apply. They are counting every touch or open of the page. So you just open that page, they count that as an application and it's not. So don't let those numbers, it's a little tricky and they shouldn't do it that way. Maybe they try to do it to make it more competitive for even, the companies who are trying to get more people to apply, but don't be discouraged because it's not a true number. It's not real. It's the amount of people who opened that job posting, not the number who applied. But coming back to your son, I think he needs to really think through. And this is kind of if I was a parent giving advice, this is the advice that I would encourage you to give to your son and anyone else listening is really before you apply to any or other jobs, I want you to stop for a minute and do a self-assessment of what are your core skills? What are the top skills that you are the most competent, most skilled at, and you enjoy doing? And it may have nothing to do with your major. I know that's frustrating for us as parents. And it may have nothing to do with the last job or internship, but you have something that you like to do and that you're good at. And the more, and that's in my book, by the way, if you ever want as a parent to kind of work through it with your kids, that process of how to help them figure out their skills. You can do it in here too. And in our programs, help them figure out what are the top three. They don't need 100 skills. I mean, even though they might, I want to know what are the top three that they really want to be doing. And if you're good at that skill, let's just call it, for example, you're great at research. Well, tell me about a time when you demonstrated your ability to do research. Was it in a class project? Was it in a past internship? Was it in a part-time job? Somewhere has to prove it out. Because the more I think our kids and our young adults start to understand the talents and skills that they have, and when you start to help them realize they have these skills, because sometimes can't see it for themselves, the rest of the job search actually gets easier. Because then when you have, let's just say the top three skills are research, highly analytical, problem solving. Okay. And you come up with an example for each of how specific example, not just like in general. Like when I worked at this role, I had to analyze this database. I was able to find these mistakes. And as a result, I was able to help, reduce costs or save money or something that's like has a metric tied to it. But when young adults can figure out what their core skills are, everything gets easier because then you're going to start looking for companies and roles that need those skills. It's, sometimes they do it in reverse. Like, well, I just want to work for like this kind of company or do this, or I get this all the time. I want to work in sports. I'm like, well, what in sports? Because sports is a business. So if you're not the athlete, are you negotiating a contract? Are you selling tickets? Are you, managing the back office? Like it's still a regular business, even though it has a lot of cachet about the name. Figure those things out and then look at what kind of organizations do that. And then encourage him to talk to people, ideally alumni who graduated only a few years ago, or other young adults who are doing a job that's of interest to him so he can learn about it through a networking conversation. And that will save a lot of time. You can learn from, tell me about what you're doing. How'd you get here? I'm curious about that. Let me tell you about myself. Let me tell you about my skills. Because I'm telling you, when students finally have these conversations, they're like, oh my gosh, that person wants to talk to me, or they want to put me in touch with someone else, or this just led to something else, and I had no idea that that existed. So I think, sometimes you got to take it's a marathon. It's not a sprint. You got to take a few steps back to move forward, and you have to assess that. And I think I'd encourage that for your son. And if you want to talk further, we can talk about that through our programs, through private and group coaching. Happy to be a resource. Okay. Um, Great question. So yeah, similar. First of all, yes, by the way, this is I have this going on YouTube and this is being recorded. So if you're here or if you're not here, everyone will get a copy of the link. All right. Hi, Blake. So I'm having trouble getting interviews after applying, where during the internship application 2 years ago, you had no trouble getting interviews and your skill set has grown since doing the internships, which is great, but no luck. You're worried that your resume format may have to do with it. Do I have any recommendations on how to format the resume so I can get it past the ATS and have it look good when a person actually sees it? Great question, Blake. Thanks for asking that. So I know Haley's going to put it there. I have a specific free resource on how to have a great resume. It's on my website, and Haley will put it in the links. So take a look at that. Let me give you some general resume tips. So let me be clear. The resume alone is not the only thing that will get you hired. It's a tool amongst all of the pieces that you need to have together in terms of how you talk about yourself, how you follow up, how you answer interview questions, how you reach out, how you persist. It's one tool. So I just want to be clear that relying on the resume as the sole resource for you to get a job, you need to do more. And kind of if what I just said earlier, you need to be networking, you need to be talking with people, and don't just shoot your resume to somebody that you never met. Like you got to warm it up a little bit saying, hi, I'm a student from this school. I'd like to talk to you, learn more about your role, or I saw you did this, or I listened to this podcast, or I saw this in the news, like something of interest as to why you want to talk to that person. Why is that person of interest to you? Resumes in general need to be clean, concise, and my overall feeling is less is more. If you're in college, I mean, even if you're not in college, one page. You should not have more than a one-page resume. I don't care how many things you've done. One page. At the top, if you're still in school or you just graduated, education on top. Very clear when you're graduating, your GPA, relevant coursework you can highlight. And then you can get into your internships. making sure that each bullet starts with a action verb. What do I mean by that? Each bullet on your resume should have something that's a past tense action verb. Built, created, developed, contributed, led, facilitated. Okay, it shouldn't say responsible for. Responsible for is not a verb, not an action. It's just a way of saying something, but it's not a great way to put it on your resume. The other thing on resumes, I want you to focus on your skills, highlighting your skills in the roles that you did. And there should be metrics. And maybe you didn't, generate X amount of revenue, but maybe you contributed to X% increase, or you contributed to working with 3 clients that received this presentation. Something that has metrics because people's eyes scan for numbers. And my general philosophy goes to resumes and talking. People don't listen and they don't read. So you need to make it clear and concise and compelling. And you need to put numbers in there because people remember the numbers more than they do the words. But take a look at the free resource I have. It'll give you all kinds of guidance. I don't think I would not stuff it with all these words. It's not about having all the right keywords. That's not how you're getting hired. It's not because you magically have like all these amazing keywords. Maybe you'll make it to a first round. To me, I'd rather you spend your time, less time randomly applying, and more time identifying the top 10 or 20 people who are doing the job that you want. So I have this, I call it like the 10 and 10 strategy. I want you to identify 10 people at 10 companies, either within those companies or amongst those, so you can start to have a really more targeted list. You get to choose. You don't have to solely look at jobs based on what's posted online. You actually get to make a choice. And by the way, when you're more targeted and clear about it, employers like that because they know that you know what you want. And that makes it easy for them because if you're going to come in and show how you're going to solve a problem for the area where you know you can add your skills, it makes you much more appealing. Okay, I hope that gives you some guidance. Okay. Um, all right. A lot of video. Okay, hold on. I just want to make sure everyone's seeing this video, or Haley, just give me like a in the chat. I assume so. Someone said there was an issue with it being blacked out. Maybe you were on your phone, but hopefully everyone's seeing this. Good one. Okay. Can you share some tips on advising students as a parent? How to balance letting them learn versus giving them advice on how to approach and how they may not listen? I happen to know a little bit about this, not just as a professional, but also as a mom. And it's funny, I left one slide in. I'm going to bring it up because there was one slide I left in the back just in case this specific question was asked. Let me just bring this to the very end. It's about what can parents do if you're trying to help. By the way, by the way, you can get the book. You can schedule time to call. I'll put this back up in a second, but I wanted to share it here. So if you're a parent and you're like, I don't know what to do, or my kid's not listening to me, or I don't know how to help them, here's some of my overall advice. First of all, take a deep breath because we're all in this together, okay? Similar to the advice that I just gave the young man who was trying to fix his okay, thanks, Haley. Just want to make sure everything's working. About, what do I do to fix my resume? I'm really honing in on help them figure out their skills. Very often our kids don't see it, right? They're not able to see all the amazing talents that they have because sometimes they're just in it. We could say, I've noticed how you're able to really lead a group together, or I've noticed your ability to analyze, or so help them figure those out. Help them figure out their top 3 skills and what the example is that they would speak to, because right, this becomes their answers to interview questions. Help them figure out their skills and what the answers are. Let's talk about introductions. And I said this earlier. I am all for introductions at the right time. Too many times I have parents tell me, like, well, I introduced my daughter to a friend and it didn't go anywhere. And I don't understand because they're pretty high up at this company and they can make decisions and nothing happened. And the number one thing that I see that happens is that these introductions are made too early. Either your young adult has no idea what they want to do, they don't know how to talk about themselves, They have not practiced, by the way, they have not practiced being in front of somebody live or over video about how to speak about themselves, how to be clear, how to ask good questions. Like they have not done that. And what I found, it doesn't matter how close of friends you might be with someone when it comes to money and business and reputation. Nobody's going to put their name on the line if they don't actually really feel that this candidate in front of them, even though you're best friends and it's the best friend's kid, it has to be really at the right time. I also feel sometimes we put our kids in front of people that are way too high up too early in their search process, that they have not done enough research on the person or the company or the organization to be prepared. So again, introductions are good. They need to be ready. They should role play with you. They should do a practice interview. They should do a practice informational interview. And if it's not with you, a friend, a family member, somebody with us, but it needs to be rehearsed because just sometimes young adults just don't even realize how they're kind of screwing it up when they are. So I'll leave it at that. Okay, structure. So I'll say in timetables, right? So I'll speak for myself. I would love for my two kids who are going to be graduating soon to have their job search. I would have loved if they had it all figured out like 4 months ago and talking to people and interviewing. But my time frame is not their time frame. And I have to live with that because it's not my job search, it's their job search. And as I say to sometimes, this is not, we are not looking for a job. They are looking for a job. And we can't own it as much as it's hard and we're emotionally attached. But one thing I have found is if you see your student and they're kind of struggling, they've had a hard time, one, they should not be looking for a job 8 hours a day every single day. That is not healthy. It's just not. You don't need that much time. You shouldn't be doing that. And if they're telling you, well, I'm doing it it's just not healthy. They should structure their time. There should be a certain amount of time that they go for a walk or go to the gym. There should be an amount of time that they do sit down and maybe there's some metrics that they can measure to of how many people. I don't want the metric that I want you to talk to them about is how many new people did you reach out to today on LinkedIn? How many new connections did you make? Or how many new emails or follow-ups did you send? Not job applications. I don't feel like that's always the best metric because with Easy Apply, like it could be hundreds at a time and it doesn't do anything. Like how many people have you gotten on the phone with and spoken to this week? Like maybe you should aim for two or three at least. So, those are the types of things with structure and helping them figure it out. And a part-time job sometimes can be great of like just to get them out of the house and not have you staring at them staring at you. All that can be helpful. The other thing to help reinforce with them, and I know it's hard, and I'll say, I'll give my older son credit. He tells me, he's like, Mom, you put this device in my phone. You know, we've had this device, this technology for years. This is how we know how to communicate. This is why we text. This is why we message someone on social media. This is why we think if we just Google something or look something up on TikTok and say, how do you get hired, that the person there is going to tell me. And what I want you to remind them, and we say this all the time, is that people hire people, not an AI and not a tracking system and not TikTok and not an algorithm. And that's how people get hired. And it's very overwhelming. And if you're on the cusp of thinking maybe there's a mental health issue, don't disregard that. Like if you think they need mental health support, which a lot of young adults do, that's important. That's more important than finding the job. Making sure that they are okay is much more important. But they have to talk to real people and it's not about mass applying. It's just not. And this is the last one. I said this before that, I get this all the time. Well, I sent a follow-up. I'm like, great. When did you send it? I sent it 3 weeks ago. Great. Have you sent another one? Oh, no, I didn't hear back. Well, the the need to follow up is real. And I know email is not their thing. It has to be in this professional setting. And it can't be like, you have an interview or you have an informational interview, you have to send a thank you note within 24 hours or 48 hours the most. And my measure that we teach our kids here is you follow up every 7 days until they respond or give you an answer that you didn't get the job. And people are like, what? 7 days? That's so embarrassing. I'm being so, bothering them. And no, it's the ones who are the most persistent are the ones who remind you that this is why they're the ones who get the job. I used to be in sales. If Daryl's still listening, she'll appreciate this. That sometimes as a sales manager, if I was hiring somebody, it was an intentional thing. I would be like, how bad do you want it? Keep following up with me to see how much I'd reply because that I know how much they'd reply, follow up with a client. So sometimes, I mean, not hopefully it's not always intentional, but have to be persistent. And one of my favorite phrases that I teach students to put in their messages when they feel like they've just been a pain and they don't know what to say, I say, write this sentence in the very beginning. Say, please pardon my persistence. It shows you're professional. It shows you're not going anywhere and you're looking to get an answer. And I got to tell you, it gives an answer like 90% of the time. They're like, sorry, I meant to get back to you. And they got to keep following up. And if they're not answering, they got to move on too. They got to have enough, I'll call it in the funnel. That's a sales term. You got to have enough opportunities. You can't put all your eggs in one basket. You've got to be working at a lot of things at one time. Just because somebody gave you a little bit of a positive interview doesn't mean that that's going to happen for you. All right, I'm watching the time and I want to get to a couple. Actually, let me hey Daryl. Thanks so much. I just want to show, one more thing. If you are, sorry, let me get this to the end here. If you want to learn more about what, first of all, if you want to get the book, please, it's on Amazon. It has my process in it. If you want to step through it with your child, son or daughter, feel free to get the book on Amazon. We do coaching, and that is the heart of our program. We do both private and group coaching. It is a simple, structured, step-by-step approach that covers everything I talked about tonight and much more. We do it over over more of a 3-month process, but ultimately they get 6 months of support. If you're interested in scheduling a consultation, you can schedule it on the QR code. Haley just put the link. We have a class starting next Monday, February 3rd at 11 a.m. But let me just be clear. We only take students who we have spoken to, both the student and the parent, either together or separately, to make sure that we know that you're a fit and that it's the right fit for you. So if you're interested, you can schedule a call. But if you're interested in any part of our coaching, we do private coaching as well and one-on-one and work with students anywhere from sophomore year all the way up to 5 years out of school to really help with that internship and that early career to help you figure that out. Okay. And also, Haley's been posting these all night. If you go to my website, even there's a drop-down resource page, all kinds of free resources, LinkedIn, interview tips, how to do the career fair, how to, get the job, everything. We have a lot of free resources. It's there for you, for your families, so you could take a look at that. And as I said before, I'm on every social channel. I don't do dances, but I do a lot of videos really talking about a lot of the same topics that we've talked about tonight. I'm looking through the questions and maybe I'll do one more question. Okay, one more question. Okay, so this parent says, son is in communications, TV, film, media, and I have no connections in the field. How can I help him get opportunities? And I get this a lot because I know as parents, we want to provide a resource, but we're not always studying the same thing, or our profession is not what our kids want to do. And I think the first thing is really making sure that they have clarity on what they want, go back to their skills and encourage them, help them. You don't have to have the network. Don't feel that you do. I mean, my whole thing is that creating and enabling students to have their own network. We teach them how to fish because if they don't understand how to get the first job, they won't know how to get the second or the third or the fourth. And it's a tool and it's a skill that they need to continue to learn. But what you can encourage them to do is help them figure out their skills. Maybe help them figure out what are the people that are doing this job. Look on LinkedIn together. You can go through Google. Just say, who's doing this role? Who's another recent grad from your school who graduated maybe 2, 3, 5 years ago, about who's in a role? And maybe you write that name down, track it, put it in a spreadsheet or a doc, anything. That's someone you want to reach out to. Did you reach out to them? How many did you reach out to? Maybe just helping them and keeping them accountable. We don't all have the resources. We just don't. Our kids go in different directions. I don't. My kids are going in two totally different directions than my husband and I. And it's not about that I have all these connections. It's helping facilitate. What about this person? Have you thought about this one? Maybe research someone who's doing this, and we just kind of pay attention. Maybe we're helping with the research of like, wow, I listened to this podcast. Oh, wow, I just read this article. You should reach out to them, not us, but we can provide some resources and some ideas, but really help facilitate that process for them. Okay. So I am so grateful for the interest. I'm going to take the questions. If I didn't get to your question, I will do my very best in a follow-up email to answer that. If you have questions, if you want to learn more about what we do, please reach out. We're on nextgreatstep.com. You can send any questions. You can send them to me directly, Beth, Beth, at nextgreatstep.com. And welcome to help you all. I'm so thrilled you're here. I appreciate your time and attention, and hopefully we'll see you soon. Have a great night.